Hey everyone, welcome to lesson 2. It looks like a lot of you have started on forming your teams, which is great, so keep that up. And I have office hours Wednesday night as usual, so if you want to talk about any of the requirements documents or what game ideas that you have that you would really have a passion to do, I'm totally up for that. Okay, so Visual Studio or Visual Paradigm and UML diagrams. I am not a stickler on like the very specific UML diagrams that the lesson covers, right? So I'm going to give you a basic overview of how to use Visual Paradigm. Again, the links in the document are incorrect. At least they were last semester. But in the email I sent out, I have the correct links, and I'll post the correct links as well to that assignment so that you can download an older version because I'm not sure if the academic key that's in the instructions works on the newer version. If it does, that's great. Use the newer version, that's fine. If it doesn't, um, then you can always use the trial version. We're not going to be using this for very long, or you can um, download the older version from my links. Okay, so getting started. So in Visual Paradigm, you'll probably just want to create a new UML diagram, a class diagram, because that's what we're going to be doing exclusively in this class. So, and you get this nice little screen. Um, so I will be doing a class diagram for the example superhero game that I posted last week. If there's any interest, I can post the PDF of those requirements again. But the classes that we'll be modeling here are only the model layer, right? In the reading, it goes over the model view controller kind of design for programming. And this is just a model layer, or just the objects. And if you look at my office hours from last week or the week before, um, these are really kind of the blueprints for the objects. So first of all, we need to think about what objects we have, and then if multiple of them can be generated from the same blueprint. So let me bring up the requirements document, and maybe I'll point that out. So as I read that requirements document, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it up and show you on this screen with the tool I'm using to record this. I'm reading down it, and the first thing that I see that I come across that's like actually kind of an object is probably the player, right? The player has the name. We have to capture that at the very beginning. So let's create a new class, and we'll make it the player class. Now there's only going to be one of these, but we still need a class to hold all that information. So let's put the player class here. We're going to go ahead and add an attribute with a getter and setter, because that's what we do in Java and in a lot of programming languages. We always add the attribute and the getter and setter. And so we'll just call this name. So the player will have a name, and you can see if you click off, you get the get name, the set name methods, and the attribute. I don't know exactly what else a player will have right now, so I'm going to leave that just the way it is. We'll come back to it, right? That's the nice thing about this tool, is you can always revisit and add things. So as I read a little bit farther, it looks like there's a map that's going to hold all of our different tiles or locations. Again, class names are completely up to you. So let's create another class, and we'll call it map. And the map will probably only have like the number of rows and the number of columns. And again, we'll add other things later. Any relationships between objects, I'll show you how to do that as well. But let's just get all the objects out here first. So in a map, we're obviously going to need locations, which are going to be their own class. The map game calls them tiles, so to just stick with that, I'm going to call it tile. So we have the tile class, and if you look at that spec, there's a whole bunch of different types of tiles. Since there's so many types, and we're not going to really, the class is set up to where we don't really do inheritance until much later, and so we don't need to do that here. If you feel like you want to start doing inheritance and saying there is a tile interface or a tile superclass, and then there's this type of tile and that type of tile and that type of tile, that's totally fine. In this case, I'm gonna have one tile, and then I'm gonna populate it with an attribute that's gonna tell me what it is. So I'm gonna have it. I'm gonna have a tile type attribute. Well, that's not how you spell tile. Tile type attribute, and we'll leave it at that again for now. Maybe a description that we can, when the tile loads, when the player steps on the tile, we can display that to the player. And then let's see. There are also items. I know there was that was part of the spec. So let's create an item class, and an item maybe just has a name, a description, and maybe a point value, right? In the superhero game, I think the items can be used like to gain attack power. So we'll just have it be called point or points. There are also superheroes, so let's create a class for heroes. So a hero class, and a hero will have a name, hit points count, right? So how much health they have left, and maybe a description, so something they say when you meet them. And then we can also have a villain class, and the villain will probably have the same things. And again, you're thinking, well, you can use inheritance, or you can have a single class that's called like NPC or non-player character, and heroes and villains could be a type of non-player character. So however you do it is fine. Just don't get too complex here. The more complex you get here, the harder it's going to be to actually build your application. Okay, so I have, I guess, most of the things that I think I'll need for this game. So let's start building the relationships. So I am totally fine with just you using this association relationship. So you're just going to click it and then drag between the two classes. So I know the player has items. I know the player will have a location that they're at. And I know that the player will have a list of heroes that they have rescued or have had join their team. The map, I know, will have a whole bunch of tiles in it because we have to have a map, like, I don't know, that's part of the game. And then villains maybe are just setting all here. Oh, wait, no, sorry. Villains can't be all alone. Well, I guess they can be, but in this case they're not. The tile itself is either going to have a hero, or it will have a villain, or it will have an item. So you can see, I'm trying to make this more readable. That works well enough. So the player is going to move around between tiles, collecting items and heroes, and fighting villains. And these are kind of the basic relationships that we'll need for this game. I think there's actually another class type that's for hostages or townspeople. And so that would sit alongside hero and villain. Tiles would have them, and the player would collect them as well. And this is a lot of your UML diagrams are going to look very similar, and don't be worried about that, right? We want simplicity here, and again, I'm not really a huge stickler on the relationships, if there's like the arrow going the right way, or if it's a one-to-many, or many-to-many, or one-to-one, or anything like that. It's important that you know those, but I'm not going to be a stickler on those. And then one other thing you can do here is if you know that you're going to have methods on any given class, you can add those as well. So let's say we know the player is going to gain heroes and items. So let's add a method operation called add item to inventory. Because we know we're going to need that method, right? There's no property of inventory. There technically is. It's this relationship here from player to items is saying that the player will have a list of items in that player class. But it's represented here. You don't need to add it here. If you want to add it here as well, that's totally fine. You can call item list as a property, and then there's the get item list and set item list as well. If you want to do that, that's totally fine, but you don't need to. Again, this relationship will be all I need to know to say, oh, the player has items. And I think there's a way to make it directional, which actually would probably help. Maybe it's generalization that I wanted to use. Yeah, that might work better. If you use generalization, even though that's not the right... You know what? No. Just... Yes? Okay. Just use a single line. Again, I'm not going to be a stickler for how this works. I think you can do like one to many. And I would be totally fine with that as well. That would help me a little bit, at least, if you wanted to do something like that. But again, not a huge stickler on that. So yeah, I think that's about it for this week. You form the teams, you pick your project, you look over it, figure out what classes you need. Again, these are blueprints, right? I'm going to have a lot of items, but they're all going to come from the same class. This is the blueprint for item. I'm only going to have one player, but I still need a blueprint for it. I'm only going to have one map, but I need a blueprint for it. I'm going to have lots of tiles in that map. Every tile is going to look like this one. Right? They're all going to have the same properties, but they're going to have a different type and a different description. They're going to have a different, they're going to hold different things. The tile might have a hero, it might not. And again, you can always just do a 1, 2, 1. Because the tile should only ever hold one hero. And same thing with this, etc., etc. And again, not a stickler on that, so... And that's actually 0 or 1, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so yeah, if there's any questions, I have office hours tomorrow night. There's always a developer forum, and hope this doesn't take you too long and it's not that confusing for you. When you are ready to turn it in, please save this as a PDF. It just makes it easier for me. And, sorry, not a PDF, a JPEG. So you're just going to go File, Export, Diagram or active diagram as image, and it'll prompt you to save it, and then that's the file we'll be submitting. Please, both of you in your team, please submit that. That would help me a lot as well. Okay, I think that's about it. Have a good week, and I will try and get things straightened as soon as possible for you.